Welcome to lesson 1.4, applying addition and subtraction of integers. After this lesson in our working class, I will be able to
applying properties of operation to subtract,
rational numbers. All right, so here we go. So for today, we're going to take a look at how to solve real-world problems with adding and subtracting integers. First and foremost, we have to go back to using our rides. So remember, read, identify, determine, and evaluate. So circling those operation words or those to-do words, boxing important numbers, underlining important words, and highlighting our question. So first we have a seal is swimming in the ocean 5 feet below sea level. It dives down 12 feet to catch some fish. Then the seal swims 8 feet up towards the surface with its catch. What is the seal's final elevation relative to the sea? So here's a couple of things. We talked the other day about how distance isn't positive or negative. It's just the change. It's just telling you how far between something or between it is, or how far between two things there is. So in this case, we have the seal, who is 5 feet. So 5 is an important number. And he's below sea level. So that tells us that he is negative in this case. So negative 5 is an elevation, so it is actually a negative number. But then here, he dives down 12 feet. So that tells us that he's going down 12 feet. And then he swims 8 feet up. So when we're putting this together as an expression, we have to start with the negative 5 because it's 5 below. And then since he's going down the 12 feet, we're going to subtract 12. And then because he went up 8 feet, we're going to add the 8. So now as we're solving this, we work our way from left to right. And I actually don't like this here, so I want you to just scratch it out in your book. And so let's take a look. We have negative 5 minus 12 plus 8. We know that negative 5 minus 12, we change subtraction to adding the inverse, so adding negative 12 and then adding 8. Our signs here are the same, so we're going to just add 5 and 12 and we get 17. And then I keep my sign and I add positive 8. Because the signs are different, I know that I do 17 minus 8, which gives me 9. But because 17 is further from 0, it's a negative 9. So I know that his elevation is 9 feet below sea level. Now in this case, we're not looking for the change. We're not looking for the distance that he swam. We're looking for where he is. So this right here, this is the change. This right here is where he's at. So these have positives and negatives, and these are our ups and downs. All right, so again, we're going to go through. We're going to do our ride. If you're ready to, I want you to try to do it on your own and come back and check your work. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and read. And we have Irene, who has a checking account. On Monday, she writes a $160 check for groceries, so $160, and it's a check. So in this case, it's important to know that it's a check because we need to know that that is being debited. It's being taken away. Okay. Then she deposits $125, and then she writes another check for $40. My question here, what is the total change in the amount of Irene's account? So we want to know the total change. Right? So in this case, none of this tells us where she started. So none of these are positives or negatives. All of these are just going in and coming out. They give the idea of a negative and positive occurrence, but in this case, we're really just talking about the change in what's happening. So what we can do is we can look at it as a complete distance formula, or we can look at it just as an addition problem. And we know that first she wrote a check for $160. And then after she wrote the check for $160, she added $125 to her account. And then after she added the $125 to her account, she wrote another check for $40. So we can write minus 40, or we can keep that addition sign in there and keep it as adding a negative 40. Okay, so now what we're going to do, again, scratch this out, and we're going to work through them on our own, and we know that we have negative 160 plus the positive 125 plus the negative 40. So I have negative 160 and 125, so I'm actually going to subtract those off to the side because my signs are different. Five minus 2 is 3. And then here, because 160 is further from 0, I know that this is still negative 35 plus a negative 40. I know a negative plus a negative means that I can just keep my signs and add. So this is 75, and then my sign remains negative. So now in this case, Irene's count has $75 less than it did before Monday. So the change was that she, yes, wrote a check for 160 and took it away, but then she added that 125 back, but then she took away 40 again. So overall, even though all that change was happening, overall the change in her account was only $75, and it was $75 less than what she started with. All right, so for this one, basically what they're telling you is that you can write this a different way. To be honest, this is kind of how I feel about it. You can do that too. All right, again, we have another example here. At this point, I'm not going to walk you through another example that's very self-explanatory right in front of you. So you have it to reference. Okay. The only thing that's changing here is that now you're taking expressions and you're answering them and seeing which one is larger and which one is smaller. So you have to find two solutions. What we're going to do is we're going to go through the guided practice here. I have 3 problems that I want you to do. I'm going to go through each one individually. We're going to start with number 1, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to do your ride and then come back and check to see that you did that correctly. Then write your expression, come back and see that you did that correctly, and then find your answer and then come back to see if that one was correct. And we're going to do that for each one of these problems. So at this point, go ahead and pause and do your ride for problem 1. All right, so here you should have boxed 15 and that he started, so it should be underlined with start. And then below sea level, that tells you that 15 has to be negative. He rises 9 feet, so rises is important. Descends means that he went down, okay? So that tells us that it's a minus or a negative 12 feet. And then the question is to write and evaluate an expression to find his position relative to sea level. Now the important part here is also that it's relative to sea level. So you're not just giving me a positive or a negative, you're telling me, is it above sea level or is it below sea level based on the answer? All right, so now I want you to take your numbers and write an expression that will tell me where Thomas was when he took his picture. When you come back, we'll check your answer. All right, so here, still have my same problem, but now my expression can be one of 2 things. He started at a negative 15, so that's right here. And then he rose 9 feet, so plus 9. And then he descended 12 feet, so minus 12. The other way you can look at it is just keep it in terms of positives and negatives and just keep it as an addition problem. He still has to start at negative 15 because it's a start. We have to give it a positive or negative. He rose 9, so it would be plus a positive 9 because rose means positive, and then plus a negative 12 because the negative comes from the fact that he was descending 12 feet. Okay, then go ahead and solve and come back and check your answer. So you should have come up with an answer of negative 18, but you have to explain it in terms of sea level. So in this case, Thomas's position when taking the photo was 18 feet below sea level. All right, number 2. If you haven't done so, go back and do your ride. If you have, you should have boxed negative 23 because that's where you started. Again, rose and dropped being important words, 5 and 7 being important numbers, and then the same thing, write and evaluate. An expression is telling us what to do, and the last part is the question. At this point, I want you to try to write your expression, and when you come back, check your answer. All right, so here you should have come up with an expression of negative 23 because remember, that always tells us the start is negative or positive, and they already gave us the negative. So then negative 23 plus 5 because the temperature rose by 5 degrees and then dropped 7 degrees. So that dropped 7 degrees I can write as minus 7 or I can write it as plus a negative 7. Either of these is correct. They both mean the exact same thing. All right, and then you can go ahead and solve, but remember, you need to tell me the temperature after the sunset. So you're not telling me anything compared to 0 or above or below 0. So in this case, the temperature after the sunset was negative 25 degrees Fahrenheit. At this point, I want you to do your ride for problem 3, and then pause and come back and check your answer. All right, so here we go. I'm not going to walk you through all these different pieces. Just know that earned, lost, earned, and then I actually missed 2 here that I realized before. So lost is important and 30 points is important. Now more doesn't mean addition here. He lost 30 points, so that's a subtraction or a negative. That's really important to pay attention to. All right, our expression, again, if you want to pause and come back, you can. But our expression should be that he's earned 50 points, so positive 50, lost 40, so minus 40, and earned 87, so plus 87 because he earned it, and then lost means that he subtracts it. Or we could have done it all as addition. If we do it all as addition, then we change all of our numbers to mirror whether they are negative or positive. So since he lost 40 points, that 40 is negative, so we're adding a negative 40. He earned 87, so it's a positive 87, and he lost 30, so it's a negative 30. If you write it using positives and negatives, you're always going to use addition. If you write it using addition and subtraction, the sign is indicated by your words. So lost obviously tells you to subtract, and earned tells you to add. And then in this case, we want to know his final score of the video game, and you should have found that Jose's final score was 67 points. All right, so we have numbers 4 through 9 here. I want you to try to solve them on your own. I am going to do this first one with you so you can see how I want you to show your work. So I have negative 6 plus 15. So I can even go off to the side and say, okay, 15 minus 6 is 9, and it's positive because 15 is further from 0, and then 9 plus 15, and 9 plus 15 gives me 24. That is what I want to see when it comes to your work. Remember, we need to have that top down, that upside down triangle when we're showing our work. So I want you to go ahead and try all of these, and when you come back, we'll check your answers. All right, so I'm going to start on the left side first. Obviously, we had positive 24 as our answer for the first one. Here we got 18. 50 minus 42 gives us 8, plus a positive 10 gave us the 18. And then for number 8, you should have gotten 97 because 65 and 43 gives you 108, minus 11 gives you 97. Number 5 was a negative 12. 9 minus 4 gave you 5. And 5 minus 17, remember we changed subtraction to adding the additive inverse. So the additive inverse of 17 is a negative 17. Since the signs are different, I had to do 17 minus 5, which gave me 12. But 17 has the larger absolute value, so my answer is negative 12. Number 7, you should have gotten 21. 6 plus 13 is 19. Plus 7 gives you 26. Minus 5 gives you 21. And last but not least, you should have gotten 27. Negative 35 minus 14. So remember, negative minus 14. So negative 35 minus 14 would actually have ended up looking like this. Adding the additive inverse, which would have given us a negative 49 plus 45. So I know that I subtracted these two to get 4. Negative 4 plus 31 gave me 27. And this one is negative because 49 is further away from 0. All right, now here you're determining which expression has a greater value. All you're doing now is you're solving both expressions and saying, okay, well at the end, which one gives me a bigger answer? So here I have negative 12 plus 6. I know that means that I have to subtract, and I get 6. Since negative 12 has the larger absolute value, I know this is a negative 6 minus 4. Negative 6 minus 4 actually turns into plus a positive 4. So negative 6 minus 4 turns into plus a negative 4, which gives me negative 10. So here I have negative 10. Or negative 34 minus 3, so negative 34 plus a negative 3, that is, which would be negative 37 plus 39, which gives me a value of 2. So even though in this case 10 looks like it's bigger, since it's negative, it's actually smaller, and this expression has the larger value. I want you to try number 11 on your own, and when you come back, we'll check your answer. All right, so you should have found that 21 minus 3 plus 8 gave you the larger value, and that negative 14 plus 31 minus 6 gave you a smaller value. Again, you're just solving and then comparing them to see which one is bigger. For the last part, you have 4 problems that you need to do on your own. I do expect when you come to class that you have your ride done for each of these problems listed, and please make sure that you do that essential question at the end. So I want you to tell me, explain how you can find the value of the expression negative 5 plus 12 plus 10 minus 7. So tell me what you would do first. Be as detailed and descriptive as you can. To be honest, you're going to need more space than this if you do it as detailed and as well as you possibly could. As always, if you have any questions, please be sure to write them down or email me so we can go over them in class.